Harrison Burton could be a lead candidate to replace Eric Almirola in 2024 if Eric Almirola retires, and NASCAR says it will not penalize Bubba Wallace for the middle finger. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into this really quickly. We're going to go ahead by starting to talk about the Xfinity Series Pocono race, as they have a title sponsor, which is going to be called the Explorer of the Pocono Mountains 225. I believe the Xfinity Series had that sponsor in the past, so glad to see that they are back to sponsor of the Xfinity Series race at Pocono, which of course is going to be in late July, early August. Pretty awesome sponsorship, and looking forward to the race coming up there. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Neiman Marcus. Now, Neiman Marcus, of course, is a local St. Louis South County company. And according to Adam Stern, Neiman Marcus will host a fashion/exotic car show the night before Worldwide Technology's NASCAR weekend gets started next week. And Roger Kroof will be one of the models in that event. Mass congratulations to Roger Kroof, as he's going to be part of that. I think that's really awesome to see. Like I mentioned, they're a local St. Louis company, so it's really good to see St. Louis brands and St. Louis companies. They're a big model company that has some big companies that work with them, including Burberry. So congratulations to Roger Kroof, and really exciting to see that they're getting a little bit more involved in NASCAR. Really awesome stuff and pretty exciting to see. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Winston. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that Winston did a small activation at an adult-only speakeasy at North Wilkesboro last weekend. It's unclear the last time before this that it activated at a NASCAR race. That is crazy to see that Winston was back, obviously, with NASCAR returning to North Wilkesboro. We're not surprised that Winston was kind of involved in that area. Winston, of course, sponsored the NASCAR Cup Series for many years, from 1972, I believe, up until 2003, and then left the sport, I think, around that time, as NASCAR was moving away from tobacco-sponsored stuff, moving toward a little more of a friendship-friendly culture at the time. But it's really cool, nonetheless, to see that Winston is getting back in the NASCAR a little bit more. Maybe we're going to see them more at the racetrack. Who knows at this point? Nonetheless, really awesome stuff, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Coca-Cola 600. As it was announced yesterday that the Coca-Cola 600 has sold out the grandstands and the camping for the second consecutive season. Coca-Cola 600, like I just said, was announced last year that it has sold out, and now sold out for the second consecutive year. It shows that the sport is growing. We've seen a couple sell so far in 2023. The Coke 600, of course, one of NASCAR's big crown jewel events. It was one of the best races last year, which I think is why a lot of people are coming back, because the mile-and-a-half racing, especially with the next-gen car, has raced exceptionally well. So that's really awesome stuff, and happy to see that it has sold out for a second consecutive year. Really exciting stuff. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about race Bubba Wallace. As it was announced last night or Wednesday evening that has won a Sports Emmy for documentary, the big Netflix documentary, the Bubba Wallace documentary. This documentary, in my honest opinion, I watched the full documentary, and I think it is one of the best documentaries I have ever seen. I think NASCAR and Netflix did a fantastic job working on this documentary, and it absolutely deserves a Sports Emmy. It was nominated for the documentary, and I'm very excited to see that it ended up winning the award and the Sports Emmy. Huge congratulations to the Bubba Wallace. It's well-deserved, and he definitely earned the right to get that award, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, Joe Strictly always does this really cool stats he puts out every single week. And according to him, Kyle Larson won by 4.53 seconds over Bubba Wallace at the North Wilkesboro AllStar race. That is the largest victory in AllStar race history. Remember, Kyle Larson at one point, though, had a 12.5-second lead at North Wilkesboro. And had that race stayed green without that competition caution, it could have been an even larger lead. Kyle Larson just had to dominate a car. We had the modern T-Rex car, which is incredible to watch. Yes, the race may have been a little bit more boring, don't get me wrong, but the same token, same time, it's really awesome to see Kyle Larson put up a dominating clinic, and I think Larson's about to go on a tear, to be honest, but really awesome to see Kyle Larson win that race, and it was just really cool to see pure domination right there. Really exciting stuff. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Camping World. Now, Adam Stern put out a tweet on Monday evening talking about Camping World, and according to a report that he kind of saw, Camping World is expected to drop the NHRA Series sponsorship after 2024. Camping World has already left NASCAR at this point, but it sounds like they're going to be leaving the NHRA at the end of 2024. Now, Marcus Lemonis was not very happy, and he went down in the comment section trying to call out Adam Stern for putting that tweet out. I do want to say one thing to kind of call out Marcus Lemonis just a little bit on this. Adam Stern was not the original poster of that tweet. You need to call the company that actually made the original post of the article and not Adam Stern, who's just putting that information out from an article. Don't call Marcus Lemonis out when you see an article. Second, it's no secret that Marcus Lemonis has been backing out of racing altogether. It's no secret. So I'm not entirely shocked he's backing out again. Marcus Lemonis has been leaving rotor racing in general. Obviously, he left NASCAR at the end of last year. Now he has gone and left the NHRA, and I think he's going to eventually be out of racing in general not too far down the road. I feel like Campbell's kind of going down just a little bit in how that company is right now. And nonetheless, it's disappointing to see, but I'm not entirely shocked and surprised. I was a little surprised he called out Adam Stern, who's one of the best journalists in the industry, and it's disappointing to see him call him out because, in my honest opinion, I think he should not be calling him out. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about North Wilkesboro. Now, according to Adam Stern, as he reported Monday afternoon, he says that North Wilkesboro nearly sold out Sunday's return of the NASCAR Cup Series. But Speedway Motorsports did not announce a formal sellout as there was a small number of weekend packages that were still available when the action started Friday. When I looked at that crowd, though, that crowd was absolutely and really jam-packed. And the energy at the event was really, really great to see. Having a near sellout. Now, granted, having 25 or 30,000 people there is going to be less people when you have less grandstands compared to a track like Texas Motor Speedway. And Texas did have 65 to 70,000 people from what I heard at last year's AllStar race. But you have to remember, Texas can hold over 100 to 120,000. Optics are the most important thing. Yes, they may have had a lot of people who showed up to the Texas race, but let's be honest, less people have been showing up to Texas time and time again. You look at those Cup Series races there. Less and less people are going to Texas because, let's be honest, the racing at Texas has been really, really dog shit. It's not been good. It's been kind of embarrassing over the years. So I'm really not surprised that people are going to defend that, unfortunately, but I thought it was not really, really good, the attendance for the Texas race. Compared to this, yes, there's less people showing up, but at the same token, same time, there's still more people that are going to show up to a race in North Wilkesboro. So going forward, I mean, it's good to see North Wilkesboro basically sold out, nearly sold out. They didn't fully sell out, but they did end up nearly selling out, and that's really, really great to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Natalie Decker. As it was announced yesterday night that Natalie Decker will drive the 08 for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Charlotte. I believe this will be Natalie Decker's first or second start of the 2023 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. Now, Natalie Decker, let's be honest, has kind of struggled in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and NASCAR's top divisions in the past. She's obviously got some sponsorship funding that's going to be coming with her, the sponsor in that event. And it's disappointing to see because Gray Gaulding, who is the original driver of that car, he's been doing okay in the cars. I think SS Greenlight Racing has taken a little bit of a step backwards in 2023. It's disappointing too because they were a team a few years ago in 2019 with Gray Gaulding who nearly made the playoffs. Meanwhile, Natalie Decker, when she's raced, she has really, really struggled. But you got to, if you bring sponsorship funding, you're likely going to have an opportunity to get a ride. So while I'm disappointed by the decision, they've got to have sponsorship funding. That's a key reason why we're seeing Natalie Decker get into the car. It's not shocking and surprising, but it's a little bit disappointing, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the Chainsmokers. Now, Bob Pockers put out a tweet yesterday afternoon, and he talked about all NASCAR Cup Series drivers are going to be required to appear on the concert stage prior to the Chainsmokers concert in hopes of getting them in front of likely a new audience. Now, this Chainsmokers concert is, of course, part of the big Chicago Street Course event, which is about a month from now. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Formula One has done this in the past where they require all their drivers to go out in front of the audience for some of the concerts that they end up doing, basically requiring all their drivers to do that. And NASCAR is doing that, trying to get to a new audience because obviously we're going back to the Chicago area. We haven't been in the Chicago area in a few years. we were in Chicago, which Joliet was about 40 or 50 miles from the area. You obviously look at the situation, though. A lot of people are not going to agree with it. Yes, and let's be honest with you, the Chainsmokers. The Chainsmokers have not had a big hit, I think, since like 2018 or 2019. So it's been about 4 or 5 years since the last time they really did have a big hit. But everyone still knows who the Chainsmokers are. And you're going to have a lot of people who are in that area who are going there for the concerts. They're not going there basically for the race. They're going to the concerts. And maybe, just maybe, some of these new fans are going to look at these drivers and say, hey, these drivers look really, really awesome. Maybe I'll root for them. As much as I don't completely agree with the decision to do this, I understand what NASCAR is trying to do. I do respect that they're trying to get it out to a new fan base. Even if I don't completely agree with it, I understand what they're doing, and I do respect the decision up that front. And now we're going ahead to on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Honda and Aston Martin. As it was officially announced last night that Honda and Aston Martin have reached an agreement for 2026, and Honda will supply Aston's engines from the start of the next regulations. Now, Honda did leave, from what I understand, Honda actually left Formula One at the end of the 2021 season after Max Verstappen won his first World Championship. Even though Honda still has stickers on the car, they will not be working with Red Bull or AlphaTauri at the end of the 2025 season altogether, as of course we're going to be seeing Ford come back into Formula One to work with likely AlphaTauri and work with Red Bull. But this is really, really huge for Aston Martin. You think about Aston Martin, how much they've risen this year with their performance out on the racetrack. You look at Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso has been the best of the rest of the season, which is great to see because for many, many years, really in the last 5 or 6 years, Fernando had not been performing. But when you give him actually a good car, he can actually perform regardless of what series it is. And it's really great to see that Aston Martin has been performing. And I think this move for Aston Martin to get picked up with Honda, I think could be a huge benefactor to making them a much stronger organization overall. And they might be able to go and compete with Red Bull. We really don't know how Ford is going to perform with Red Bull either, because it's been a long time since Ford has been in Formula One. The last time they were in Formula One was in the early 2000s with the Cosworth engines. So I'm really intrigued to see how this is going to go, but it's really awesome to see the Aston Martin and Honda are picking up a partnership. This is a really, really huge deal. There's a lot of talk about who could potentially be future drivers for that team. Yuki Tsunoda's name hasn't brought up in the conversations for the team, maybe for 2026. That might be it's around time where Fernando Alonso retires, maybe in 2025. But maybe, just maybe, Fernando Alonso is going to stick around long term and stay Formula One for many, many years down the road, especially if how he has been performing with Aston Martin. I wouldn't want to leave the team, especially if I'm performing really, really good. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to that. But nonetheless, I'm here for it, and I'm glad to see the Honda and Aston Martin are going to be working together. This is a huge deal for Aston Martin, because I think their performance is going to get better because they've been the best Mercedes team recently, and I think that they are going to be a team that really benefits and does really, really good, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead to on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Indy 500 qualifying TV ratings. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday morning that NBC got a 0.56 rating and 842,000 viewers for Sunday's Indy 500 qualifying window. That is versus a 0.56 rating and 915,000 viewers. So not too much down in the rating side. I think it's 0.58 actually, and basically down about 100,000 viewers. Again, IndyCar has done some promotion release for the Indy 500, but one of IndyCar's biggest problems that has come to play, especially over the last couple of years, is the fact that they have had a terrible time promoting their series, and that is going to hurt IndyCar in a big way long term. They still were almost at 100,000 viewers. I do believe that some people were watching other stuff going on. Obviously, near the end of qualifying, you did have the race day going on for the AllStar Open, which that, of course, is not far down the road. And it's disappointing, too, they couldn't get it full, basically better because, again, I think promotion has been a big issue for IndyCar for the last few years because the drivers in that series, I think, are better than some of the other series, just my honest opinion. But it's disappointing nonetheless to see that the Indy 500 qualifying TV ratings are down. Nonetheless, so it's interesting to see. It's disappointing, but overall, it is what it is. And now we're going ahead to on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Marcus Ericsson. Now, it was reported by Jenna Fryer of the Associated Press that there are two teams that have reached out to defending Indy 500 winner Marcus Ericsson. They say that they'll have offers for him when he's allowed to speak. Now, the two teams, as she says, one of them starts with an A. The other team is one where the driver currently at Chip Ganassi Racing will be headed to. So when you do little context clues, the two teams that he could end up driving for in 2024, because Marcus Ericsson is currently on a contract year with Chip Ganassi Racing. Why would you want to leave for Chip Ganassi Racing, though? Well, the two teams that he could end up going to. The first one is obviously Aaron McLaren. Aaron McLaren, though, is in a very interesting state because currently right now they have Alexander Rossi, Felix Rosenqvist, and Pato O'Ward. Now, Felix Rosenqvist is currently in a contract year with Aaron McLaren. If he is with Indy 500 this Sunday, though, would they consider bringing him back next year? That could be a huge thing. So you could potentially have 3 or 4 drivers on the same team. If Marcus Ericsson does go to Aaron McLaren, though, you would have an extremely strong team because Marcus Ericsson has been an incredible driver. But also, I think the other team could also come and play is Andretti Autosport. Now, Andretti right now, Devlin DeFrancesco, he's currently in a contract here, from what I understand, at that team currently at the moment right now, though it's not officially confirmed. But Devlin DeFrancesco, we don't know about his future past this year. We know that Romain Grosjean is going to be there long term. And Colton Herta, he wants to eventually go to Formula One, but I think he's under a multi-year deal with Andretti Autosport currently at the moment in IndyCar. But Marcus Ericsson, everyone's looking at him because we look how good he's been with Chip Ganassi Racing, and he's a driver that really could carry his own regardless of what team he ends up going to. Now, the question is, do I think he fully leaves Chip Ganassi Racing? I don't know at this point. But if I'm Marcus Ericsson, when you look at the bigger picture, because he's got a couple of potential areas he could go to or stay with Chip Ganassi Racing. If I was him, I stay with Chip Ganassi just because Chip Ganassi Racing is the best organization right now, one of the better organizations in IndyCar, and they may lose potential performance because you don't know how much longer Scott Dixon's going to be in IndyCar. We don't know how much longer other drivers. I know there's other drivers that Chip Ganassi is looking at, maybe Callum Ilott perhaps. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But if I'm them, I'm not getting rid of Marcus Ericsson. I'm trying to keep Marcus Ericsson in the organization. We're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. But it sounds like there could be a potential possibility of some moves happening. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about David Gillen. As it was announced yesterday morning that David Gillen will drive the one for Tricon Garage this weekend at Charlotte. Now, the reason there's no other drivers in that truck is because of the Triple Truck Challenge. David Gillen, who of course is the co-owner of Tricon Garage, has not raced in the truck series a lot as of recently, so this will be his first top-tier series start of the 2023 season. Now, David Gillen is the owner, so it's probably going to have a really, really strong truck. The question is, how will he perform with his truck? Well, I think David Gillen, despite the fact he's not been in as much, I think David Gillen actually will do a pretty good job. I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm not even saying he's going to finish in a top 10. But I think David Gillen could contend for a top 20 finish. There's a lot less talent in the field this weekend, not as many Cup guys in the field. So the field's a little more different, of course, with his experience in the Cup Series and other forms of racing. I think David Gillen is going to have a shot of being somewhat competitive. But nonetheless, it's really exciting to see that David Gillen's back in the truck series. I was shocked when this was announced. But nonetheless, I'm really here for it, and I'm definitely really happy to see that David Gillen is having a shot and opportunity to race. Really exciting stuff, and glad to see that he's getting a shot from his own team to be back in this series. Really exciting stuff, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the North Wilkesboro TV ratings. Now, many of us were intrigued at how the TV ratings were going to look for North Wilkesboro. According to Adam Stern, FS1 got a 1.28 rating and 2.203 million viewers for Sunday's AllStar race at North Wilkesboro. That is down for a 1.38 rating and 2.481 million viewers on last year's race at Texas. Now, it does need to be mentioned that this is all including the pre-race and the post-race. And when we look at the actual race of it, it actually was almost flat compared to last year. That's one thing I did not see a lot of people talk about when they were talking about the story, especially on their YouTube channels. I didn't see a lot of people talking about that. But I do want to mention one thing is that with it being a smaller market with North Wilkesboro compared to a track like Texas, you're going to probably have less people that are going to tune in. But I do also want to say one thing. Why was this race not on Main Fox? Whoever thought putting the truck race on Main Fox and putting the All-Star race on FS1 thought that was a good idea. I want to ask whoever thought that was a good idea because that was, in my opinion, was personally not a good idea. Yes, I'm not mad about the Truck Series race being on Fox because I think it would have been cool for the Truck Series, especially it being the actual first race back, the first points paying race back. You should have that potential on Fox. But the All-Star race should have been on main Fox. Yes, I know there's obligations and they always have the AllStar race on FS1, but there should have been a way to have this race on Fox because this is like the Field of Dreams event for NASCAR. And the fact they could not put this on Fox is a little bit frustrating and a little bit disappointing because, again, it was a little disappointing because Fox has been making some really bad decisions over time. Some of the people they've been bringing into the company, some of the personnel changes they've been making. It's just definitely a little frustrating to see. And if I was the one running it, I would have put the All-Stars easily on there. I understand putting Sonoma on there. You want to have multiple races in a row. And also my decision to put every single Cup Series race on main Fox. I understand we still have cable. We're getting away from cable, and I think everything should be on broadcast long term, including the All-Star race and the Busch Clash. I want every race on main networks, but I think at least for this one especially, this should have been on main Fox from the get-go. As for the whole thing as well, being down 200,000 viewers for the whole coverage isn't great. But again, also, it does go for everything, so it was almost flat, so it's not completely negative. You also did have the Celtics game that was going on for the NBA Finals, and a lot of people were focusing on that. So that's another thing that needs to be noted and keep in mind. It's disappointing to see, but I'm not entirely shocked, and I'm not entirely surprised about the situation. It's disappointing, but nonetheless, I'm not too surprised, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Graham Rahal. As it was announced yesterday in really shocking fashion that Graham Rahal will substitute for Stephen Wilson in the 2023 Indianapolis 500, driving the number 24 car for Dry Rumble Racing with Cusick Motorsports. Now, I want to get into the crash in the situation. So in practice on Monday afternoon, a lot of drivers are checking up going into turn number 1. Catherine Lay she was trying to check up as well, but didn't slow down enough, unfortunately, and ran in the back of Stephen Wilson and caused a really, really severe crash. Later today, unfortunately for Stephen Wilson, he will have to have surgery and will not participate in this event. First of all, I do want to say before talking more about this, my thoughts and prayers do go out to Stephen Wilson. I really hope the surgery ends up going successful today. Just really, really sucks for him. He's been working so hard to get this opportunity to run the Indy 500. This is his first opportunity he was getting to run practice and test sessions because he never really had that opportunity in his shot, and it got completely shattered. Also, it's like I said, it's just really, really sad and really, really heartbreaking for Stephen. But now let's discuss about Graham Rahal. Remember, Graham Rahal actually got bumped from the Indianapolis 500 initially. But because of the fact of this situation, he's driving for this team. Now, this is not the first time that Graham Rahal has driven for Dry Rumble Racing. He actually substituted for Mike Conway back in 2010 at Iowa Speedway. I think that was a Honda, though, and not a Chevy. What's also interesting is Graham Rahal has been a Honda factory driver really his whole career. But it's really cool to see he's getting the opportunity and a shot to run the Indy 500. And had he been in this car, because I think the field is a lot stronger with Graham Rahal in it than not in it. And I think Graham Rahal could honestly have a shot of contending for the win. This car has been really, really fast in traffic. We've seen how good Ryan Hunter-Reay, who will be his teammate in this event, has been. I think Graham Rahal is going to easily be a contender for the victory. I think he will at least, maybe if not a win, top 10 easily. That car's shown a lot of great pace and a lot of great speed, and would be a really, really cool story to see Graham Rahal win that for Stephen Wilson. I personally probably would get very emotional if it does end up happening. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to the situation. Wishing Stephen the best of luck. Wishing him a successful surgery later today. I know the injuries really, really are sad and just heartbreaking to see for Stephen. He worked so hard to get this opportunity. I'm wishing the best of luck and hoping for a speedy recovery. And I want him back at the Indy 500 next year. Would it be a cool story if he gets to run the 2024 Indy 500 and comes back and wins? I really hope that ends up happening, and we'll see if it does end up happening. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to be talking about 2311 Racing. Now, I believe it was Steve Lawletta or Mike Wheeler who put this tweet out. But according to them, 2311 Racing has begun building their shop. Now, 2311 Racing, of course, is building a shop, and they're hoping to long-term expand their organization. But the walls are finally starting to come up, and they're hoping to have the shop completed by the latest 2024 or 2025. 2311 Racing, like I mentioned a second ago, they are hoping to eventually expand to a 3 or 4 car operation to be like Joe Gibbs Racing. They want their shop basically to be very, very similar to what Joe Gibbs Racing shop is like. They want the shop to look like that and want it to be displayed just like that. Now, 2311 Racing, obviously, they're an organization that is definitely on the up and up right now. You look at their performance this year, and they're having one of the best starts to a season they have had for the first half of the regular season. Tyler Reddick has already scored a victory so far in 2023 and is currently in the top 10 in points at this particular moment. Bubba Wallace, while struggles happened in the beginning of the year outside of a top 10 at Las Vegas, Bubba Wallace is on the best stretch of his NASCAR Cup Series career currently at the moment. In the last 6 races, Bubba Wallace has only finished outside the top 12 once. In that race, he was contending for the win and was battling for the win on the last lap of that race. This team has really come in their own, and they've made a lot of big hirings. Eric Phillips is one of the higher-ups, I think, at that team now, and also working as a crew chief for the third 2311 racing car. And obviously, the addition of Kurt Busch has been a huge key success to why 2311 Racing's performance has been going up as an organization overall. So it's really, really great to see 2311 Racing heading toward a bright future. We know long-term that they are going to eventually expand. Maybe Denny Hamlin in 2024 ends up going there. Might be exaggerating. They're working on contracts for Denny Hamlin. We don't know exactly how long it's going to take for that deal to get done. 2311 Racing is also in a contract year as well with Toyota, but I would expect the 2311 is going to get that expanded. But I think this is huge for 2311 Racing to have their own shop. They're becoming more of a super team at this point, and I think this organization is headed toward a very awesome long-term future. And it's really cool to see because it shows, I think, maybe at least some of the deal with the issues of the deal and all that kind of stuff are kind of starting to get kinked out, and they're kind of currently working toward the foreseeable future. So it is really exciting stuff to see the shop being built currently right now. I'm looking forward to the future of this team, and I think a lot of great things are on the horizon for 2311 Racing. I don't think it'll be long before they win a championship. They've got 2 good drivers on that team right now. If they get a third driver that's really good in the lower series, they're going to be in a really good position long term. Exciting stuff overall. Really excited for this team. And nonetheless, I'm happy to see that this team is beginning to show some huge success in the sport. And nonetheless, it is really, really awesome and fantastic to see that this team is showing some great success. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we are talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, we have a couple of Bubba Wallace stories to discuss about in today's episode. The first one revolves around the middle finger. So there's been a lot of talk about the middle finger. So after the NASCAR Cup Series race at North Wilkesboro, the AllStar race, Bubba Wallace is about to be interviewed by Jamie Little. He went up and reached and pulled the middle finger out. Now, a lot of fans are really, really upset and pissed off at Bubba Wallace for showing the middle finger. So some people were wondering if he was going to get penalized. Well, NASCAR confirmed and announced they will not be penalizing Bubba Wallace for flipping the bird after the race. Well, inappropriate according to NASCAR, they said it wasn't done malicious and it was being done to a front. Some people believe that it was Ryan Blaney who was the one he was flipping off, or Chase was the one he was flipping off, but we're not entirely sure. This is absolutely the right call, in my opinion. And the reason is because we've had other drivers who flipped the bird off in the past, and they've never been penalized. So the fact that people believe that Bubba Wallace should have been penalized for flipping the bird is absolutely ridiculous and completely stupid, in my honest opinion, because you look at drivers like Chase Elliott, Christian Eckes, Will Power comes to mind, Kyle Busch in 2010 at Texas. You name it. There's so many situations. Sheldon Creed, Josh Berry. Many times in other situations where drivers have not been penalized for flipping the bird, yet this guy flips the bird and everyone gets frustrated and upset. It's just disappointing to see and really, really frustrating that people are mad at him for that. But now let's get into the other controversy that is completely unacceptable. So, after the NASCAR Cup Series race, a couple fans got on Bubba Wallace's radio. Somehow this ended up happening. I'm not sure how it ended up happening, but this ended up happening where a couple fans got on Bubba Wallace's radio. And unfortunately, they said some really unacceptable stuff and unexcusable stuff that I'm not going to say here. What I'm going to say is this. Those fans who went on Bubba Wallace's radio, completely unacceptable and completely uncalled for and just ridiculous. NASCAR has said that they are going to investigate that situation and probably try to figure out who the 2 individuals were who put out those derogatory comments. What we saw today on Sunday, there was a lot of people who were booing Bubba Wallace, and Bubba Wallace was trying to be the heel, which is really, really great to see. The Bubba Wallace was embracing the villain role. That being said, let's get into the other stuff. The stuff on the radio just completely uncalled for, in my honest opinion, and completely unacceptable. It cannot be accepted in the sport. We are not in the year 1950 or 1960 anymore. We are in the year 2023, and fans and people should be able to be welcome. And it's disappointing to see that a couple jackasses who got on his radio ruin it for everybody. The few ruin it for the many, as I think some great person once said. It pisses me off that there are fans like this, because every fan should be welcome in the sport, and there should be no issues there. No one should basically have to be afraid to go to a racetrack because of stuff like this. And Bubba Wallace had this happen a lot recently. And a lot of people say a lot of just hurtful stuff. And I think a lot of this hate that Bubba Wallace has been getting is because he's been successful on the racetrack recently. I talked about a little bit ago with the 2311 racing shop being built up. Bubba Wallace's performances have generally improved time and time again. In the last 6 weeks, like I mentioned, Bubba Wallace is or 7 weeks. He's had 2 finishes outside the top 20, but you look at the 2 races where it ended up happening. 22nd at Richmond, obviously that was some sort of issue on the pit crew. But since that, he's only had 1 finish outside the top 20 or outside the top 12. And that was when he was going for the win. He has had 3 top 10 finishes, 2 top 5 finishes, and he's been contending for the victory. If you count the AllStar race, he's technically had 3 top 5 finishes in a row. Bubba Wallace absolutely belongs in this sport and is an extremely talented driver who could win multiple races this year and is having the best start to his NASCAR season in his Cup Series career. He's currently in the playoffs, being 23 points right now above the cutoff line, which is the same as his car number. It's just disappointing to see that there are fans like this who can be hurtful and just absolutely being horrendous. And it really frustrates me that there are fans like this, because it ruins it for everybody, and jackasses like this should be banned from the sport. I hope that these kind of fans go away so the sport can be better, because we are past this time and we need to move on. We're in the year 2023, and this shit cannot happen, and it's completely unacceptable and absolutely ridiculous. And I hate it for the fan base because it ruins it for the fans, and it's just completely uncalled for and completely unacceptable. And I really hope that fans like this go away from the sport altogether, because the less of these fans we have, the better the sport is going to be. Everybody should be welcome into the sport. And the fact that fans are doing this kind of stuff is uncalled for. And I hope these 2 fans, because one of them apparently bragged on social media, I hope they find both fans who got fans, I'm going to call them air quote, I hope they find both jackasses and ban them from the sport completely, because this is unacceptable and completely uncalled for, and I really hope that they are banned from the sport, these fans who got on the radio. And this kind of stuff has happened before. We've seen fans get on the radio and say some things, but this stuff cannot fly, and it has to end immediately. I hope it ends up ending soon, and I really hope it ends quickly, because it needs to happen as soon as possible. Hopefully, this gets taken care of, and NASCAR can investigate the situation here so we can stop this stuff from happening going forward, because it needs to end now, and it has to stop, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major stories of today's episode, as we're talking about Harrison Burton and Zane Smith and Stewart-Haas Racing. Now, Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024 could have some pretty big, massive shakeups. One of the things that we are expecting currently at the moment is that Josh Berry is expected to drive for Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024, replacing Kevin Harvick in the Ford car, and that announcement could be coming as early as this week, as Larry McReynolds has mentioned. But another thing we need to talk about, a key piece of Stewart-Haas Racing, comes down to the 10 car that Eric Almirola currently drives. And Eric Almirola has been 50-50 on the talks of potentially retiring. He could retire at the end of the year or could come back in 2024. But if he does end up retiring at the end of 2024, who's going to replace him? Well, according to some rumors and rumors that have been going on, Harrison Burton could be the favorite to replace him at the end, Eric Almirola, at the end of the 2023 season. Now, what would that mean for Zane Smith? Well, according to these rumors and reports, Zane Smith could end up driving for the Wood brothers in the 2024 season. Now, I do want to say one thing. If I had to choose between who I put in the right, I keep Harrison Burton in the 21 car and put Zane Smith in the 10 car. Zane Smith has obviously been a better driver than Harrison Burton. He's already won a Truck Series championship, and I think he'd be more successful in that 10 car than Harrison Burton. So why is Harrison Burton being considered over Zane Smith? Well, 2 factors. One, he's got sponsorship funding. He's got funding from Dex Imaging. There is a big potential possibility, if Eric Almirola is to retire at the end of this season, that they are going to need sponsorship funding, because Smithfield could leave at the end of the 2023 season if Eric Almirola decides to retire. So they're going to need sponsorship funding. And let's be honest, while Harrison Burton is not as good of a driver as Zane Smith is, he's got sponsorship funding, and that is really going to play a major role in helping him out. Let's get to the other side of things, the other reason why he potentially could drive the 10 car. KHI management. It seems like Stewart-Haas Racing is becoming Kevin Harvick Incorporated management because you look at the driver lineup. Josh Berry, who is going to likely drive that 4 car, is expected to sign with Kevin Harvick Incorporated. You've also got Ryan Preece, who's been part of KHI management for many, many seasons. So you have those 2 drivers part of KHI management. And a lot of people thought that this could happen because of the fact he's also part of KHI management, has been part of KHI management for many, many years. Now, going back to talk about Harrison Burton, he would not be my first choice to get into that car. There's a couple other drivers I would choose. First one, obviously, would be Zane Smith. Zane Smith is a better driver and would do better in that 10 car. Second driver would be Todd Gillen. Todd Gillen's been outperforming Front Row Motorsports equipment and has been doing a really good job at the Front Row Motorsports organization. But you think about Zane Smith going to the Wood Brothers. There is potential possibility that the Wood Brothers, if they do get Zane Smith, that team can perform a lot better. Zane Smith, of course, is a Truck Series champion. It has been winning races in the Truck Series this season and is already looking to try to go back-to-back this season. And is probably Ford's top prospect currently at the moment. When you look at the prospects of Ford, you've probably got Zane Smith at the top, then probably Cole Custer, Riley Herbst, and then probably Haley Deegan's in 4th or 5th on that totem pole currently at the moment right now. But when I think about the Ford camp and look at their future, Zane Smith really is the future prospect. Yes, Josh Berry is going to be going into the Ford camp likely, but Josh Berry, he's been from the Chevy camp, and he's really not a prospect if he's in the Cup Series on a full-time basis, because he's going to be in the Cup Series, especially after how good he has been. But when I look at this move for Zane Smith to the Wood Brothers, I don't think this is completely an horrendous move for them, because I think Zane Smith is, I know that Penske's been maybe looking at Zane Smith. Ford wants to give Zane Smith the best opportunity. And you know Ford, especially how much the backing they do have with Zane Smith, you do know they're going to do their best to try to give Zane Smith the best performance out on the racetrack that they can. They want Zane Smith to be a Cup Series champion one day, and they want him to lead Ford long term, because you look at Ford's performance, he's been the most successful Ford driver in 2023, as Zane Smith has been the only multi-time winner in the Truck Series this year, and Ford has only won 4 or 5 truck races, or altogether races in general, in 2023. They've gotten 3 truck wins this year and 1 Cup Series victory. Ford needs to figure out their long-term future, because I'm worried about their long-term future going forward. But going back to Harrison Burton going there, SHR's future is very, very murky. Josh Berry going there is going to be good, but Harrison Burton going there is not going to be great, because here's the thing. You're going to look at the average age of the team, and yes, Harrison Burton will be 23. They will be a little bit older, because I believe that Harrison Burton, he's my age. Josh Berry's 32 or 33. Chase Briscoe will turn 29 at the end of this year. And Ryan Preece is the same age as Joey Logano, I believe, and Josh Berry. So he's about the same age there. He's about a year younger than Josh Berry. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Stewart-Haas Racing, what's going to happen to the team. I'm not sure if it's a great move for the organization, but it sounds like it could end up happening, and we're going to have to follow up with the story as time goes on. But it sounds like there's a really good chance and possibility that you're going to see a certain Harrison Burton driving for Stewart-Haas Racing, but we'll have to keep following the story. It's just a rumor currently at the moment, but it sounds like potentially he could drive for SHR. So that is going to for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on so you notify when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Link description below with that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about the Bubba Wallace controversies? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Harrison Burton potentially driving for Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. There could be a second video up on the channel today, depending on if Alex Bum does announce he's returning or not. Tomorrow on the channel, there is going to be race picks for the Coca-Cola 600. Then on Friday, there's going to be a NASCAR news video, followed by, of course, the NASCAR Truck Series race review from Charlotte. Then on Saturday, there could be a double upload day on the channel. There could be maybe a silly season update or something along those lines dropping, or a news video dropping. I'm not entirely sure. Followed by, of course, if the Xfinity Series race does end up happening, I'll have a race review for that. And then Sunday, of course, if the weather does comply, because the weather's not looking too great right now, we could be having the Coke 600 race review on the channel, along with the Indy 500 race review. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.